That's just such a important thing for young creatives, especially in any creative endeavor. It's so tempting to want to paint like this person or take your photos like this or play guitar like this or write like this. But if you can find yourself and be true to it, people will connect and they'll be so loyal because there's just too many algorithmic things happening and it all kind of does feel the same. But if someone's truly their self, it's like, whoa, what is that? And it might not even be that radical. It's just that it has heart.
Welcome back to another episode of Good Work. My name's Barrett Brooks, and this is a show made up of long-form interviews with talented people who are using their careers to make the world a better place. My conversation today is with a guy named Josh Scott. He's the founder of JHS Pedals and the creator of the JHS Show on YouTube. He has almost 500,000 subscribers on YouTube. He is one of the most well-known guitar pedal makers in the world, and he has built a really meaningful company at JHS over the past 15 years that consists of almost 50 people now. They have made over 100,000 pedals a year for the last several years. And even if you're not into music, or you're not a musician, or you don't play instruments or the guitar like me, you've probably listened to musicians who use their products religiously. And if you're in the music community, or you're a guitarist, or you're in a band, then you've definitely heard of JHS. They're beloved by so many people because of the way they build their brand, the way that they invite people into community around music and around guitar and around guitar pedals. And one of the things that I love about Josh is that he is a positive sum game mindset kind of guy. He thinks there's enough room for everyone. And one of the things that you'll see if you watch his YouTube videos is that he promotes brands across the spectrum. People that some business builders would consider as competitors, he actively promotes on his YouTube channel. He sees it as a positive sum game where everyone can win, and he wants to build a community around music, guitar, and guitar pedals. They have done some incredible collaborations with great artists and great brands over the years. They have a ton of fun with the way that they build the company, and Josh is the creative force behind it. We use a joint venture that they did with Ross Pedals to revive a dead brand and bring it back to life. And the documentary they made about it is kind of the organizing force for the first half of this conversation. We use it as a way to talk about Josh's love for storytelling, for history, and for really digging in on what makes brands and products special. He has loved history from when he was a kid, and he uses that as a way to look back at the past, share stories so that we might all learn from it and have the context for not making the same mistakes or doing the same dumb things as a species that we've done in the past in the future. So please enjoy my conversation with storyteller, historian, founder, and creator of JHS Pedals, Josh Scott. Let's get to it. Joshua Heath Scott, welcome to the podcast.
Good to be here.
So usually, well, I know exactly where I want to start with your story, but the thing I have to say first before we get into this is that this podcast would not exist without you, at least not in this format.
Wow.
And so this is actually perfect because we're going to go back to when we met, which is right about the time when I want to start with your story too. So we met last year. So we met in 2023. So hopefully this lasts forever and people listen to it forever. And we were on a retreat together. And my little hot seat session was, so I'm thinking about starting this podcast, and it's like, there's all these different angles I've talked about. And it's like, there's this climate angle, there's this other angle. You just kind of shut the room down for a minute. And you said, you know what? I haven't known you for very long, but here's what I know. Based on how you show up, the questions I hear you asking, I think I would basically listen to you ask anyone whatever questions you want for however long you want, and you should do whatever you want. And that stuck with me so much. And so just a shout out for, I think this podcast was a direct outpouring of that. And in fact, it has been a blast because of it. And people like it. So you were right.
Yeah, the moment I met you, I remember watching you ask people questions, and I was like, wow, he's really good at this. Because it is a special thing, it's not natural for everybody. You just have great questions. So I'm so pumped. I'm pumped for what you've been doing and the episodes that have aired and stuff. So
I appreciate it. Well, a little bit of we'll call it a half circle moment since we're still in the early days, but I love it. Okay. So about that time, there was a thing going on in your world. This was in 2023. You are kind of like an industry historian, I would say, in terms of guitars, pedals, just kind of music in general. And along your journey, you had happened upon these two related brands, and they were both built by the same guy. So one was Custom Amplifiers, one was Ross Pedals, both created by this guy named Bud Ross, right? He took Custom public. It became a big thing. He went on to later, I think, sell it, or it failed or something like that. And then later he created Ross Pedals. That didn't blow up as much as he wanted. He sold that, and eventually the brand died. It became a bunch of other stuff first, and then it kind of died out. And one of his grandsons discovered this family history at some point and goes searching and is like, oh, wow, the brand is kind of defunct. I wonder if I can reacquire the rights to it. So he reacquires the rights. He's like in college or something at this point, and he starts hand making pedals, kind of like the early days of your company, actually.
Yeah.
And he goes after that for a while. And what I understand to be a typical story in the industry now is that kind of fizzles out eventually. It's like very hard to keep making pedals by hand for a long period of time. And he hits this point where he can't keep going like that. And so Ross is like this beloved brand in the industry. A lot of people like it. It's very well known. It's kind of like occupies this, I don't know if it's mythical, but I think of it as mythical based on what I heard of it. And there have been all these brands, current day brands, who reached out to the family to ask, can we help? Can we acquire the rights? Can we make pedals under the name, whatever? And the family was always kind of like, I don't know. It's not a great fit. And then you reach out and you say, hey, I'm from JHS. I am JHS. Is there anything I can do to help? And this leads to a series of conversations. And basically the short version of the end of the story is you all end up deciding to do a joint venture where you're going to revive the Ross Pedals brand. And so this has happened at this point. This is happening right as we're meeting in 2023. And you all make this beautiful 30-minute documentary about the history of the brand and Bud Ross and the family story and people that worked with him and kind of this full arc of what that brand went through. But now the brand is actually part of the JHS brand in a way. And you all have kind of built this beautiful thing. And so I wanted to start here because it's so emblematic of, I think, so many of the ways that you do business, the way you view business, brands, and so many other things. So the first thing I wanted to ask you is, when did you first discover Ross Pedals? And was there kind of like a typical Josh Scott rabbit hole that happened when you found them?
The first place I remember seeing the Ross Pedals, I was probably in my early 20s, and they would just kind of appear like, as a young guitar player where I grew up, you just kind of, there weren't even a lot of great music shops. You just kind of found stuff in pawn shops or whatever. This is late 90s. And you would see a Ross pedal every once in a while. And then when I got the whole JHS wheel rolling and kind of accidentally started this company, I remember I would modify them every once in a while. I would open them up and change a couple parts. And they just always like existed. They're, to me, in my age, like demographic of players, I think Ross pedals, it is a little mythical. It's not like unicorn mythical. It's more like Lord of the Rings, the extra map. Like, you know, it's there. You're not sure what language but it's a thing, and it's always interesting. That's how it feels. It's like that kind of mythical. Yeah, so just always see them. And then fast forwarding, well, even as a young guitar player, probably my second band, I had a custom amp. I never knew they were related. No one did. And then I guess if you fast forward a bit, my career took a shift, like a parallel. It took a new parallel. I didn't change what I was doing. I had a company, I had employees, I was manufacturing, creating new pedals, but then I got really into history. So it's like a parallel lane. The rabbit holes are left and right for me, and they're fun, and you jump in, and some stuff's interesting and some's not. And one of those was, I learned that Ross Pedals was from Chanute, Kansas, near where I had moved to Kansas City. And then I saw this connection in Overland Park, Kansas, which is like 10 miles away. And I was like, holy crap, this is like in my neighborhood. And I'm a history nut. Like, who are these people? Found the grandson, had them come over here and did an initial interview that I think I aired on a Patreon long time ago. And that was where it started. My wheels immediately were like, I saw how they were trying to relaunch the brand. And I saw a bunch of red flags with manufacturing and like efforts. And I just sat back, and in my mind, you know, they make fun of me here. Like, I have no lack of ideas. It's like ideas are my biggest problem. I always had that idea of like, it's like a hometown thing, sort of like, I really would love to do this. So I just sat back and I saw it fail. I saw it basically fall apart in the pandemic. So that's like the full deal. And I reached out in the pandemic. It was like, hey, I see it's rough. Like, this market's hard. I would not want to enter it right now, brand new. That's like the short version of that whole journey.
Yeah, I love that. So, the grandson describes it as you reaching out saying, is there anything I can do to help? Like, I see some of the stuff that's going on,
Yep.
and I know you, and I know that was pure spirited, I'll call it. Like, you were actually offering to help. What I got curious about was there any part of you deep inside that was like, we could help them take this thing back to where it was? Or was it truly just like, I'm here if you need me at the time?
Yeah, the initial reach out was absolutely, hey, is there anything I can do to help? I know that you and your friend, you're making these piece by piece in Chicago. I know your issues with dealers. I understand he was having all this complications with Japan and distribution. And like, he was wrapped in every nightmare possible for a new company, like in my industry. And yeah, it really was like, hey, anything I can do to help? That was sincere. I did not imagine it so quickly becoming, the conversation did turn into, well, what if we make them in town? I don't think I ever saw that exactly in that way. It just felt very natural. Yeah, I think it was a sincere, I mean, I know it was, and I've done that quite a few times. I genuinely like what I do, and then I like helping others do what I do. I think the community is such an important part to any industry. So I've always had this part of me that money's really important. I need to eat, but like something beautiful happens by supporting community and sharing what you know and helping other people not go through what you went through. And that was the motivation of that first call.
Yeah, I mean, it goes through everything that you do now. And I think you have this reputation for kind of trying to be a pretty honest broker of information in the industry, promoting other brands, like being pretty honest about how your pedals stack up to others and like what's good about everyone. It's a very positive sum kind of mindset versus like competitive mindset or zero sum. Do you remember the moment when that conversation kind of shifted from, hey, let me share like what I've learned building the company to where it is now to, hey, what if we did this together? Was there a conversation or a series of events?
Yeah, I think it started happening when I realized exactly what was failing. If you're in an industry and you've made it through some of the pitfalls, you know the pitfalls. So I had some assumptions, but a lot of it was just like there was some relational tension. There was like, why are we building them this way? There was a disagreement on scaling it. There was a disagreement on should they be made like they were made in the 70s exactly? Does that even make sense? Because it's not the 70s. There was a bunch of this like disjointed thing going on. And so the conversation led to, well, I mean, I make pedals really well. It was just like, yeah, I feel like I have a thing down here, at that time, 40 employees. And it's like, we're putting out, 100,000 pedals a year. We could add these in. Maybe we could help you in that way, because it all came down to supply. It wasn't even a supply chain. It was just like manufacturing and the ability to meet demand. And then once you miss demand, this is like Shark Tank 101 or whatever. It's like, if you can't supply demand, someone else is. And then no one's that wonderful that everyone's going to wait forever. It just doesn't happen. So it just turned into, well, you just can't make the pedals and you're having difficulties relationally, this relationship and stuff. And so then it was a pretty quick, well, hey, come meet, he just happened to live down the road, which was crazy. We found out, Bud he started custom amps down the road. The first amps were built here. Like the designer of the pedals lived down there. It's just a crazy. So for me, that got really exciting. It was like this weird thing that like had been attached through my life was actually from this place that I'm now settled in. And he saw that too. So he came over and we met, and it pretty quickly became, let's try to make them here. Let's start it over.
Yeah, I love that. And it's easy, always the looking back thing. It's easy to see how these things come together, but you going from Alabama to Mississippi to Kansas City now and kind of having these different home bases over time and ending up in a place where these things were made and conceived of and all of that. And you still had enough like brain trust there that you could actually revive it feasibly. I'm actually really interested in, to me from the outside looking in, you're excitable. You get on a path and it's like, all right, let's do this, And so I'm curious for you, like when you started getting excited inside and what that emotional arc was like for you as, Josh, as you started to see possibilities here.
Yeah, that's such a good question. because it's some stuff I've been pondering on and like advice I've been giving people. I've learned about me. So I'm 15 years into this now, this career I didn't necessarily choose, but I kind of chose. I look back and it's like, oh, this is funny. There's a bit of it that's like humorous. The one thing that has never failed me is if I'm excited. It just never fails me. And then everyone I know, it's the same thing. It's, you can chase a trend, which is not bad. You know, sometimes you chase a trend. You can chase big, immaculate, crazy ideas. You can try to change the world with some invention. But those things don't always work. But if I'm excited, I've learned that it matters twofold. If I'm excited, I won't burn out. I will love what I'm doing. And that is the success in my business has been, if you can just stick around and keep your heart from like becoming crispy and burned, you know, like I always say, I don't want to be crispy. It's like this analogy we have. I want to stay fresh. I won't burn out. And then the second part of that is people see excitement and they just want to join in, you know, and I think there's a bit of a compass in this for me. Every success I've ever had was not necessarily great idea, XYZ. It was, I was excited. I can say that about every one of them. So the correlation is always there that I'm excited. So when I feel that, that's a compass for me in business. The spreadsheet might be like, but it somehow works. Like it somehow the spreadsheet doubles or something. I don't understand it. It's just like a phenomenon. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Do you remember the part of the process where that fired up for you, where you could feel it coming online? You're like, oh, here we go.
It was when he said, yeah, let me come over and meet with you guys. Because that excitement for me, it was that there's potential. I would say like that's a feeling, that's part of the excitement is there was a potential to do something that wasn't expected. I get excited in those moments. That's part of the compass thing too. It's expected of a pedal company to put out pedals. Duh. It's expected of whatever career you have. A bread maker is going to make loaves of bread, right? It's like, that doesn't mean it's boring. It's just like, yeah, the unexpected potential is like, that's where something weird will happen. That's where you end up on the other highway and you're having fun and you didn't know the highway existed. And so that's like part of that, the compass. You know, it was definitely, oh, this has potential. It's super random. I think I also like, there's a bit of improvisation to it. It's like playing music. I love improvised music more than planned music. I did a lot of session work and touring work and you learn parts, but I actually just love studio work because you go in and you just kind of pull stuff out of your butt and orchestrate, and it's beautiful and weird and you forget what you did and it feels more artistic. I think there's a piece of this. I'm excited because there's potential to do something artistic. And what I mean by that is I don't know where this is going, but he wants to meet. This is a road I did not plan. There's a chance to be artistic in business. You're like, what is this going to look like? I don't have a roadmap. And what that guarantees me is I won't do the same old thing for sure. That potential gets me excited.
Yeah, it's like coming up with solutions on the fly where, you know, there's not a roadmap here. There's not some predetermined destination we're going to. It's like, hey, we're exploring this together. You're in my space. I'm showing you what we've learned. It's interesting to me to think about too. You've learned from so many mistakes along the way. It's like you've made a lot of them. And now you've got this grown-up operation that's a pretty well-oiled machine. You know what you're doing. You've handed off a lot of what you're not good at. How often do you get to show people around that are trying to get started? And is there some pride to that of getting to show off where you've ended up after all these ups and downs and learnings along the way?
Again, back to the community thing. I would say I don't know the term. I mean, pedal history starts in 62. So, you know, we're sitting here on 60 years of pedals. Guitar industry is even further back. But like the current crowd of young effects pedal creators, guitar makers, it has a good community feeling. This era, the era right before me, like when I got into the industry, there's a lot of crotchety people. They didn't share anything. Everything was secret and everything was special and no one could make what they made. And it's like blah, blah, blah. It's just like a lot of that. And then this younger era, my era, there's so many of us that I think we do encourage each other through kind of like how unorthodox some of our approaches are. I think I'm super unorthodox, but I have so many friends that's like, I'm over here a weird historian creative making product. I mean, it's like such a weird roadmap, but then equally, I have a friend that like designed digital like drone equipment and he's making like computer pedals. And that's so interesting to me because I don't have a chance of doing that. But I think the cross pollination is fun. I guess the big thing is it's like, yeah, come look at this. Come see it. I show people all the time. People will come do live streams here in this room, fellow makers. Yeah, let me show you around. Here's what we actually do. Maybe it'll trigger an idea in your head. And I think the theme is like, be yourself. That's what I'm always trying to tell people. And I think there's a lot of pressure. You think that success for you is what worked for someone else. That's the first mistake everyone will make. That's the first mistake I made. Success for you is you need to be yourself because you can be excited and you won't burn out. And people are contagiously excited if you're excited. And that whole thing, I think our community has that right now. So I could tell you 20 stories of just such unique people making things. Everything's better when you have everyone else alongside. I think if your competitors are your friends, there's something interesting about it. They're still my competitors, but I don't want to like put them out of business. I just want to compete with them,
Yeah, there's a little bit of this kind of like setting the pace for one another that I think can happen in that kind of way. If you're in the same space and you're both exploring creatively, and it's like you're continuously setting the bar a little bit higher, where higher is not, necessarily measured in, I don't know, the classic terms of like more revenue or whatever. But if it's in creative work, like I get inspired by other people I see making great podcasts. I don't want to make a show that's like anyone else's show, but I do get inspired by different things I see people doing. And that helps me think about new ideas for myself. It's like, well, they're doing it like that. I wonder what my equivalent of that thing would be. If he's over here trying to do like cinematic 4K style, like crazy background type stuff on his videos. Oh, okay. So he's stretching to another edge of what's possible here. Like, what would be my edge that I would go to if I could do it that way? I'm with you on that. There's this like, people only listen to so many podcasts. You've got X number of hours a week, and that's a competitive reality. People only have so many pedals, and that's a competitive reality. But that doesn't mean there's not room for many companies to exist.
Yeah, and I think whether it's a podcast or a pedal or a loaf of bread, for the most part, maybe not so much the bread, but like probably you just buy what you relate to. I'm sure by now you figured this out. Like, I don't think I make the best pedals. I just make my pedals. And people say they're the best pedals because they relate to that style. They like the quirkiness. They like the whatever they see. But that's me. And so, with your podcast, your best chance is you. And that's why you're great. That's just such a important thing for young creatives, especially in any creative endeavor. It's so tempting to want to paint like this person or take your photos like this or play guitar like this or write like this. But if you can find yourself and be true to it, people will connect and they'll be so loyal because there's just too many algorithmic things happening and it all kind of does feel the same. But if someone's truly their self, it's like, whoa, what is that? It might not even be that radical. It's just that it has heart.
I'm thinking a lot about this idea. Like, you ask someone, what's your favorite movie you've ever seen? And they'll tell you. Some people will. Some people are like me. I don't know. I don't have a favorite movie. I've got 10 favorite movies. But someone tells you their favorite movie, their favorite book, their favorite pedal, or their favorite podcast. So immediately they're down selecting to that I've ever seen, that I've ever read, that I've ever used, that I've ever listened to. So number one, we're down selecting to that. And then on top of that there's this mesh layer of who is this person sitting across from me that I'm asking this question of, and what about their story fits perfectly with my story or the story of this movie or the story of this pedal in a way that connects. It's like there's these little receivers and connectors in there, and whatever combination of them made it resonate. The best book I've read in the past 5 years is a book called You Could Make This Place Beautiful by an author named Maggie Smith. She's an author and a poet. It's a book about divorce. I am not divorced. I've never been divorced. I hope to never be divorced. But something about the way I was growing at the moment in time when it landed on my desk, and the fact that I accidentally ended up with a signed copy, and like just the speed with which I was able to read it and everything else factored into, this book had a massive impact on me in a way I would never expect given that it was a book about divorce by a poet that I've never read before. I'm not saying it's the best book, period. I don't even know if I would recommend it to half the people that would ask me that question. And so there's something in there that like really resonates with me, obviously, or we wouldn't be having this conversation, that if you're chasing what you think people are going to want, it's like chasing a ghost. You just can't do it. All you can do is come from your angle.
But we love top 100 album lists, and the Apple one I think it was Apple just came out. You know, everybody's like pissing all over it and stuff. It's like Taylor Swift is next to Pet Sounds, and people are losing their minds. I think that stuff's really funny. And then in my world, it's like you get on Reddit and it's like best delay pedal. It's like, come on, this is like, I get a lot of humor. I laugh and chuckle a lot at that. I know why we want it. There's a part of all of us that want to know if I'm going to go to the bookstore. I love reading too. It's like, what are the top 10 best books ever? Have I read them? You know, I'm supposed to read them, but really, I don't know. It's a human condition. We want to know a list.
And every time I pick something up because of that, I'm supposed to, it's so hard to finish. I always get bogged down in it.
Same.
And that's that excitement versus supposed to, the like obligation versus following what we really want. I want to come back to the being genuine thing later, but I want to stick with a couple more things related to this Ross story for a minute. Yeah. So you're excitable. You have lots of ideas. I'm that way. I get excitable. I have lots of ideas. And I know that there's some risk factors to that. It's like sometimes I can get overly excited and pursue something before I've actually kind of sat with it long enough, and then it dies pretty quickly after that. That happens to me occasionally. Sometimes I get really excited and it's a long-lasting thing. It becomes like the core of what I do. And discerning between those things is really hard. That's my first question for you. And then I want to talk about how you interface with a team related to your excitability. But how do you discern between the type of excitability that has real legs and that's worth investing in versus the type that's like, that one might be a flash in the pan and I should let it go?
This is hard. This is really challenging. I'm 42. The company's 15 years old. I've been a creative. I didn't realize it, but you know, since I was a teenager. I love ideas. I love ideation. I love execution, though. One thing that helps me communicate well, I don't know if you're familiar with like the Clifton strength tests. Are you?
Yeah.
So that out of all the, you know, there's like a million personality, like Enneagram fans and the cult of Enneagram or whatever. I get it. For me, the Clifton thing is great because it's like, it kind of speaks to how you operate and lead. For a creative, I think it's helpful. Having everyone in my company does it. And so then you get used to people and you can it's a good language. I see in myself this real crazy friction. Like I feel like a tornado a little bit because I have high ideation. I'm almost like tons of learning, context, all that. But my number one is achiever, which is really weird. It's like you have a super creative person who I'm a dreamer, but I dream, but I wake up to do. So not just to do, my wife is an activator. So she'll do and like just walk away and forget it. That like kills me. I have to commit and like seal the deal. Like I want to finish everything. And so it's crippling. So this question you're asking, I'm 42, I'm about to be 43. It's like where I'm at. This is my midlife crisis. You just asked like, I don't
just right at the heart of things.
You really did. I mean, this is kind of where I'm at. Like I'm finding myself, I don't want to rabbit trail, but like this has led me into some really beautiful spaces. Like I've canceled so many things on my calendar. I'm staying at home more. I'm letting myself play sandbox more and be okay with like not finish. I'm trying to let myself play because I think my whole creative life, I have played hard, but I always turn everything into a business or like finalize it or make a product. And that's good, but I feel there's an exhaustion from it. So how do I know, you're asking me like, how do I know what's the right one? I guess that's what you're asking. How do I?
What's the difference between a sandbox project and I
don't have a great answer. I feel like I'm right in the middle of this, but I will say, and it probably leads into this next question that you hinted at. I think what has worked for me right now, hindsight is really wonderful. I did not plan this, but we'll get into this because I think you're going to ask me this question later. It's the team I've put around me and the trust we have and the autonomy and voice they have to help me. And like Steve, he's my closest counterpart. He's the operator general manager. he knows me so well. We've grown together. We're at 13 years together.
Wow.
He said something to me, I think early this year. We were talking about something, and we've grown a lot in our communication. We've really gotten good at existing together. We're very different, but we share the one achiever, which is weird. But our other 9 strength finders are totally different. He said the other day, I'll paraphrase. Basically, he's like, "Yeah, you always have tons of ideas, and I've learned over the last several years, never shut you down. Never shut you down." He goes, and then there's a point I'll see like your energy on it, and then I can advise into it and go, yeah, let's steer. And then I will. And he's like, he's learned. So I have him as this guidepost, but I have to really trust him, and he'll hurt my feelings. He'll hurt my like creative feeling, but I'm over it in 10 seconds. You know, I'll be like, I'm butthurt but you're right. Cause I trust him, and he's usually, the dude's always right. And he'll probably say I'm always right in some extent. But it's like that. It's the team. I think Josh as an island is pretty horrible, maybe. Like I feel like I think it's an unhappy me. What I mean by that is I want to finish everything. I want to play. Those things fight, and then I'll just never sleep, and I'll play and finish it, and I won't throw stuff away enough. I think there's something about like, you got to just throw stuff away. And I've kind of like preached this over the years to other creatives, and I realized I haven't lived it as much as I've preached it, saying, I used to say this all the time, creativity is wasteful. And it is. Like, you got to waste a lot of time. If you're going to write a book, you're going to waste a ton. Wasteful meaning you can't just be super productive off the start. And so I think I'm learning more than ever. I got to just hit the delete button and like defrag and move on, man. Like, it's okay. And I think that relationship, like Steve particularly, and then Nick here, who's the creative director, he's been with me 13 years. Us 3 together, there's a real nice balance. Nick is like super creative. Steve is super operational, and I'm in the middle. I have both traits. So there's this like pyramid that I accidentally stumbled into relationally. And so I think the key for a lot of people like me is find some people to live with them creatively.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I think sometimes I'm not able to see it for myself. What's good, what's not. And I've had to build some habits around things like, hey, I'm going to share an idea right now. And this idea is at the stage of, it's going to hurt my feelings if you say no, or that's stupid, or, so don't crush my soul. Let me just say it. And right now in this conversation, I just want you to build on it. Okay. Only build on it right now. Later, you can crush my soul, and that's fine. I'll be ready for it later. But right now, I'm at the stage of, it just came to me. I want to share it with someone. I'm feeling excited. I might even wake up tomorrow and be like, that was a stupid idea. I don't know. Yeah. But right now, don't kill it for me. And so it's interesting how, like, you go through some time and you start to learn what you need in those relationships too. It's not just having the person alongside you. It's learning how to benefit from the relationship and like accept the help.
Yeah, I had it happen this morning. I'm working through, we have 3 slated releases. We saw a spot for a 4th release in the fall, and I started pulling out prototypes. I started dreaming, like, I have all these recipes and things, but I don't have any products yet. I have a lot of good, useful circuits and things, but I was like, what's the product? Like, what do people want out of this? So I had this idea this morning. It still feels good. I might hate it tomorrow, but I told Steve off the bat. I sent Steve a Marco Polo, and I was like, all right, here's the deal. And I feel myself this morning like, he's going to hate this. But he didn't. He came back and he's like, yeah, that's amazing. There's a problem here. And he's like, the energy's there. He might actually hate it more than he lets me know, but it's like, I think he's learned. I was excited. And whether that leads to this thing, it'll lead somewhere because I'm excited. I think that's what happens. That's like the moral.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's something about exit velocity here. It's like, I got to be able to put it out and like test it with some people and have room to sit with it myself and see how excited I really am about it for a little while. Maybe it's a day, maybe it's a week, maybe it's a couple months. And then often I know if I sit with it for long enough.
Same.
If I get started immediately, sometimes that can be a little dangerous because then I'm like the month in and I realize, I didn't like this very much. And now I'm in the middle of it, which was why, for example, I like sitting on this podcast. I sat on this one for too long, but I sat on it for like a year and a half because it wasn't right. It's like I'd have an idea, I'd sit with it for a while and I'm like, no, that's not quite it. And then I had to go through that a bunch of times until it was like, oh no, okay, that's exactly what, of course that's what it is. And now I'm ready to go.
And that's what I'm also learning. You know, I mentioned I pulled this bucket of prototypes. We're always designing here. I've learned this lesson too. And I got excited. This is today. This is real time. I sent Steve the message. I have my bucket of prototypes at my office, you know, like freaking mad scientist. But it's like a lot of that stuff's like 8 years old. And I pulled it out and I was like, this is cool. It didn't work back then. I don't like this knob. This control sounds stupid, but dang, that's cool. There was something interesting today that was a little new for me because some of this stuff set because the pandemic kind of broke the way we built in a lot of good ways. So I was like revisiting some pre-pandemic Josh, like the way I thought about design. And I was actually way more ignorant of some of these circuits. I know more now, but it was fun. I was like plugging up my past and I was like, huh, I like that. I don't like this part of it. Or, you know, I had like 8 of them. It's like, this one's killer. I'd put it out. But a couple of them, there's like magic in there. It was interesting because I could have, and there's a version of me that I have done this where I just ditch something like that and it's in the garbage. But I was actually able to play the past a little bit, literally. It was like really cool. So what you're saying with the podcast, I think there's a beauty and maybe part of the sandboxing for people like us is it's okay that it's not for now. That's hard on me.
Yeah.
The achiever in me is like, put a label on this crap and sell it. I want to get it done. I don't think that's the best thing. And that's a hard lesson for me.
Yeah. I've been, one of my projects kind of in the background, we've actually both got similar things going on in the background where we're both writing, and I've been working on a memoir project. So it's like this twofold story. The arc of growth I went through when I had my first son and the arc of growth I went through when I had my second son. The first one was about processing and kind of like integrating an experience being abused when I was younger. And the second was about, oh, I thought that was the thing that was wrong with me. It turns out I still have all the normal problems everyone has with like growing up and all of that. So that's what this book is about.
Wow.
So much of what I've had to get comfortable with is, number one, it may never see the light of day. Like I might make 10 copies of this thing, you know, and that might be it. And it'll be worthwhile still, even if that's the case. But the second thing is, I know at least half the words I'm writing down, they're going to end up on the editing room floor. I know. That's just what I got to do. I got to produce a lot of stuff to figure out what of it matters for the person who's going to consume it, right? All of it matters to me because it's all my stuff. But then some amount of it is not going to matter for telling the story I'm trying to tell. But the only way to end up at the part that sticks around is to have all of it. I have to write all the words to get there. I can't help it. I don't know. I can't do the refined version first. So embracing that was a really important part of this project for me. It's like, okay, I'm going to write 300,000 words and I'm going to get to publish 120 of them. So 60% of the work is going to go bye-bye.
What's weird with me in this writing, you know, I'm learning to write. I love writing. I think I'm good at writing, but I actually suck at writing at the same time. And I'm like learning. That's hard for me. What the exact thing you're saying is like, I love efficiency. It's so weird being such a creative person who loves improvisation and like, I love all the crazy, like wasteful things of art. And when I sit down to write, I can have these moments where I don't want to work on something that's going in the garbage, but that's writing. Like you're literally writing to be edited all the time. Like it's always an edit, but you can't think like that. You have to, like for me, I actually glitch. I have moments where I glitch because I'm like, it's all process. It's like, okay, I have to write this chapter. I'm not ready to write this. I need to write it though to get ready to write it. What? And it's like the most comical thing in my mind. I really struggle with this. One thing about writing is writing's the ultimate visual of this. Like a creative person making stuff to intentionally delete most of it to get to a thing you don't even know what you're writing. It's like, it's comical. Yeah.
It is comical. So all of this ladders back up to, we were kind of at this point of like, how do you tease apart, you know, what's worth shipping, what's worth just playing with, what gets killed in that creative process. And we were talking about Steve and Nick kind of being, you didn't frame it this way, but almost like a little bit of a buffer. They're like partners in crime and deciding what goes, what stays, what gets executed. And so I wonder, like, at what point do you bring the rest of the team? When does the rest of the team find out, no, we're doing something or we're fully exploring the implications of this thing?
So there is a rest of the team. That's 6 total. I don't know what normal people do here. I've had some conversations. What happened at JHS? Steve and Nick were always the triangle because, I mean, from ground zero, 13 to 15 years, you know how this works. Like, they've seen everything.
Yeah.
Then we have 2 people who have been with me about 8 years, Belle and Hope. So Hope has done every possible job here. And then she went into training and took over HR. She's the mother, she's the carer of she's amazing. Then there's Belle. She ran the production floor for years. She's like an amazing systems strategy person. And then I moved her in and she's over marketing. She's really a project manager of releases and marketing team, meaning all the editors. And then the guy who took her spot when she transitioned from running the production line of physically building pedals, which she was brilliant at, she went into project managing the brand with me and the marketing and all that and releases. A guy named Michael stepped up from our quality control and took over the production. Us 6 have a weekly meet. Us 6 are like, this is the congressional meeting, everything is discussed openly in that group. Our discipline is just, there's at least once a week we get together, we have an agenda, we talk, we hang out, we try to spend family time together, so to speak. And everything is filtered through us because we're all 6 beautifully, I think, and perfectly different. There's hot takes left and right, and there's a lot of respect. It's beautiful. It's like these other 5 people are everything I'm missing in myself. I got real lucky on some of that, and then some of it was strategic because I saw it in the people. But yeah, like Belle would just look and be like, yeah, that's not going to work. And she's just like such a strategy brain, Steve's high strategy as well. Hope's always going to be like for the people, and she'll rein in some frustration sometimes. And then you have, it's just beautiful. And then Nick is like, what can I make? So you have this wonderful energy in that. And so that's a big piece of my world. And I think that's how I've stayed sane. It's 6 of us. It's not, JHS is not me. It's the whole company. There's a lot of other people. I think you could probably go as far as to say there's about 15 to 16 leaders. They're actually leaders, but that core of 6, we drive the other leaders, and then, just it's a ladder.
Yeah, you're kind of like the front man for the group in band terms, and everyone's still got a role to play there. And so when something kind of escapes or is prioritized outside of that group of 6, how does the rest of the company find out about it? What's that process like to let everyone know, okay, this is a priority now? Like, when did the team find out the Ross thing was happening? And what was that like,
You're asking every perfect question because there's so many. So I didn't do a good job of this for a while. Okay. So yeah, you're leading.
Well, I can relate to this too because look, I've led companies. I know how these things go,
like
right?
You're asking you're asking questions. Honest to God, I wish I had heard this podcast 24 months ago. Like I feel like because where did it start? It was just kind of a constant thing where Steve, think of Steve like true, always side by side. Like Steve knows everything before everybody. But then Steve would find out about stuff like after I've had 8 meetings with some rando. And then it got to where this wasn't intentional. This is just excited Josh, right? Like excited Josh doesn't want to bother Steve because Steve's having to deal with XYZ. But what excited Josh doesn't know is when he doesn't bother Steve, Steve has to come in and recoup 8 hours of meetings. And what the crap is this? And Steve would have caught these 5 massive red flags that excited Josh. You get it. This is like my life. This year, I've like hammered this because Steve and I had a conversation and he's like, hey, just bring me in. You're not bothering me. So the final straw, honestly, and this was a great project. If anyone's watching recently, I'm not hating on this project. This is a wonderful collaboration, but internally I had a hard point with it. We just collaborated with the Beach Boys, and there's a Disney documentary that's out now and really fun. I mean, what a crazy thing we get to do, like to make these products with the Beach Boys. And so this was one of the final straws because this project took about 2 years, probably 18 months, but I didn't even bring Steve in till like last November. And it was like, I created my own hell is what I did, because there was a deadline on the release of the Disney documentary. There's like all the, you know how this goes. Like, we're working around all these meetings, the celebrity, all this stuff. Steve should have been there the whole time. So this was the final thing. And there's a couple of collaborations. So just like the Ross thing, there's some other discussions with possibilities. And I just wasn't bringing people in. And so I was doing it too late.
So let me ask you a question about that.
Yeah.
So this is a little bit coach me turning on. Is any part of that protecting you from the disappointment of them saying no before you're ready for it?
That's like therapy, you. No, I actually, I want to say no, but I'm like, maybe it is. Or I've thought about this. I actually have not thought about the way you said it. I wonder if I'm such a high capacity, high achiever, right? Going back to the Clifton thing, it's just a good language for me. I can do stuff by myself pretty well, but I'm 42 now, but in my brain, I'm like 28. So there's this thing where I think I just can do a lot more than I can do. I think I've always had super high capacity, but I think you get so used to experience is like, yeah, I'm experienced. I'm going to make less mistakes. I have more wisdom. It can also get you in trouble because you can just assume, well, I'm amazing. I've done this. But it's like, no, I've never done a collaboration with the Beach Boys that involved Disney. No, I've never worked with this Japanese brand. No, it's like, you haven't, Josh. Like, be honest. I think there's a bit of that that's like, I really am that confident, not in like a bad, it's just like, I feel confident, you know, I don't have
it's rooted in reality, right?
Yeah. I don't have an issue with like, oh, I can't pull that off. I'm the opposite. So I think what I'm learning is I'm having to flip that and be like, hey, you should check yourself. Like you're a little off the rockers here. Like you can't handle these 4 projects. But yeah, there probably is like baby Josh doesn't want people to say that's dumb. That's probably in there. It's probably like 28%.
Yeah. So you've learned to kind of like bring Steve in early and say, okay, look, this is a thing I'm interested in. I want you to be here in the early part of the process that we can kind of be in it together.
Yes. I have even been bringing in Belle too, because if something does happen, I hate repeating myself. It's like my nightmares are just me in a room repeating myself. I've like had this awakening. It's like, hey, Steve's on the call, Belle's here. And Belle will just like turn her camera off and be around and listen and do other work. It's life-changing. If something does happen 5 calls out and we're in the middle of a deal or like some whatever, she's like, yeah, I remember. Yeah, I know Tom or whatever. And I'm like, why have I not done this? Like, it just feels silly in hindsight, right?
Yeah,
like for someone like me now, because I'm such a learner, I'm like, yeah, this is smart. Bring people in to check and be a part of it earlier. I don't know why I didn't do this. I think it was some kind of self-reliance or protecting my whatever, covering my
or just probably some of the same gusto that got you going. I mean, you know, if you go back to the early days of this company and this brand, you just did it. You know, and then you sold some on consignment and then people wanted more and you made more and you just did it.
Yeah.
There's something real though. You said something at one point, which is, I don't remember what interview it was on, but it was something effective. Like I have to make sure you didn't use the words overcommit, but basically that I don't wear myself out with the things that I commit to. And I'm hearing elements of that here and how you're sharing it, like thinking of yourself like you're still 28 and you can just pull it all off. And you know, I've had to start to learn that too, is like, oh, I really can't do 3 episodes in a week. I mean, I can, but at the expense of I work every night until 1 a.m. and then I wake up and I'm like synthesizing the information, writing notes, and I'm just obsessed, you know?
And then
there's a cost.
In like 6 weeks, you hate your podcast.
Exactly.
Oh, I know.
Right. Whereas if it's one, it's like spacious and I can just think about this one human being for a whole week and I can kind of like sit on it a little bit. And I'm like, why can't I just do that?
Yeah.
You know, do the easy version. It's still hard for most people. It's enough. Like that's enough, you know? Okay. The last thing I wanted to touch on, we're going to use Ross as like a framework here, obviously for the conversation. But the last thing I wanted to touch on directly with the documentary was there right at the moment in that documentary, it was like 35 minutes long and I'm at minute 30 and I'm thinking, oh, this is just like any project for a creative person Josh sees himself in, but Like that's what's happening. And then it couldn't have been 30 seconds later. You're like, yeah, there's an element of this where I see Bud and he's really like a role model to me, and I see parts of myself in his story. And so you included it. But I wondered, it was such a brief snippet because the camera wasn't on you. It wasn't about you and you didn't want to make it about you. It was about the story of Ross.
Sure.
But obviously the person with the vision on a project or who reads a biography or whatever, we are looking for elements of ourselves in the world and expressions of it and ways to reflect back to us who we are. So I just wonder, like, what of you did you see in him, and how did that both affirm you, but also like reveal some things that you might want to look out for going forward?
The first thing I would say is a sweeping statement of like, it feels like a more and more firm reality that I feel like I want to die on this hill. It's just that we all just want to be in a story. What is the story? We're all making something that's part of something before. We're all standing on the shoulders of giants. We're all consuming what is adjacent to us and finding a new possibility. We're all just in a story. And I think with the Bud Ross thing, and I love what got guitar where it's at. I love technology. I love music. I love musicology. I love knowing that, in 1932, a guy winds a coil around a magnet and helps forever amplify the guitar. And then within a few years, rock and roll happens because they turned the amps up too loud and it was broken. And then a fuzz pedal happens. And then the 60s in 7 years goes from Leave It to Beaver to people on acid rolling in the mud. Why? Like, how did this actually happen? Well, it's like technology is fascinating and the storyline. So my career is in this storyline. And so when I saw Ross, I got to attach myself to a period before I was born. Like, that feels, I don't know why. I just love being a part of the thread. And these threads go everywhere. I love attaching myself to legacy stuff. I love the idea of building Ross again. Things can just die and disappear, but like, there's such value in these stories. And a guy like Bud, nobody's walking around right now really talking about Bud, but his legacy is really important. So I get to help keep that alive. I think we all just want to be part of a story, or we want to make a story and we don't even know it. We're all writing a story every day. I think what's enticing about reaching back to a brand or a moment that we could help bring back to life is you're built into the past. Like, somehow there's a bridge. So, I'm born in 82, but now I'm connected to the 60s physically through this brand. And to me, that's fascinating. It's probably just trivial and like something that excites me. I don't know why. I love history because I like the context that we get from being part of these stories. It's the same old thing over and over again. We just have TikTok now, but it really is the same thing. It's kind of like, what can we learn from the context? And so there's part of it where connecting yourself, or just speaking for me, when I connect myself to Ross now, I'm part of a thread that goes back before I ever knew what a guitar pedal was. And to me, that's just stinking cool. I love it.
Now, you've talked about this a few different times, in videos and interviews of, some people are connected to the future, they feel like they're building the future, and you feel very connected to the past and kind of like maintaining what's good from the past. And you've told a story of sitting with your dad, watching documentaries growing up, watching Ken Burns documentaries, Civil War, baseball, or whatever it is, and how you see roots of kind of the way you tell stories now and some of those early experiences. I'm just so interested in like what role that's playing in your story. Like, how does telling these stories affect your own? You say like, we want to be part of stories. I feel that, but like for you, you definitely feel that you want to be part of a story.
I like it more than the pedals. That's the thing. I mean, I'm in this room is a museum, and then I have this archival. It's like 6,000 pedals, and it's all archived. And, it's a look inside the haunted mind of Josh if you ever come visit. But it's like artifacts, and I could walk over here. There's a section I'm looking at. It's like weird fuzz pedals from the 1960s. And it's like weird crap. Like, only the select nerds know what this stuff is. I love that. I have a little collector community. It's like me and 3 guys, different parts of the world. We help each other out, and we're kind of similar ages and similar vibe of how we collect. none of us really care how they sound. We're always like, what city was this in? Why did they, it's always like the story, every pedal. It's honestly just a time machine. I think when you get into history and studying artifacts and technology, there's something that allows you just to time travel through it. It's more about the story, the narrative. I can look at a pedal and see the decade. It's a visual thing. It's the font choices, the kerning on the fonts, the color choices, how they painted it. I don't know why that's so interesting to me, but I am obsessed with it. Like, I am literally obsessed with, there's something about the past that it's like I kind of worry about it being forgotten. And a motivation, my writing, photography is the same way. I do a lot of like like I love photographing the Midwest. I love road trips, taking extra days, and like I shoot a lot of medium format film photography and stuff. I love the idea that when I take a picture, I saved that frame from ever being deleted. And so if you look back you see a really nostalgic photo of something. If someone didn't take the photo, we would have forgotten it. This is an interesting thing. I mean, photography is time travel. You saved the past for the future. That's like how I view photography. So I feel the same way about electronics and musicology and technology. When you let someone hear an album, I let my kids, this was a funny one, but like Kid A, Radiohead was really influential to me because it was a what the crap is this record? And then I started loving it. My daughter hears it. She's like, it's all right. But she's heard like Billie Eilish use the same. It doesn't work. Like my mom letting me hear Sgt. Pepper wasn't as effective as it was to my mom. But what we're doing is we're passing along those like milestones. We're saving them. When we share a record, when we share a photo, when we share a story, we're freezing the past. I guess that's how it feels to me. That's like such a big motivation. There's probably some psychological baby Josh problem in there, but I don't know. It's like I'm freezing the past. I don't want it to die. And I remember that feeling watching Ken Burns' The Civil War specifically. We had 4 TV channels on our antenna. PBS would play that stinking documentary all the time, and I'd watch it with my dad. My dad will watch the same stuff. He's still watching the Civil War probably. I just remember the feeling of like how beautiful the past was. And I remember being a kid I remember this thought, does everybody know this? I don't know what it was. I still feel, does everybody know this? Like, I feel like that urgency in me. So I don't know. It's quite a bit of rambling, but it's kind of a feely, I don't know. I don't have a great answer, but those are some of the motivations creatively that I feel. And it usually comes back to, can I freeze this moment, or can I go to the past and pull it back? Can people learn? That's probably what it is. Can people learn from this?
I mean, this is like a rhetorical question. Isn't every creative project the search for the answer to an unanswerable question on some level? Like, isn't that what we're doing?
Yeah. And I think even further, like every creative project's kind of choosing a road that you're not even sure if there's a road around the corner. Like, it's just chaos. I mean, it's organized chaos. Take a paintbrush and start painting. You actually don't know. Every artist, yeah. I mean, talk to any producer, anyone who's ever worked in a studio. I've rarely come out of sessions and a song is what they thought it was going to be. That's what's interesting. That's that thing. We actually talked about it up front in the episode here, but it's just like, I get excited because there's potential. Potential is just, I don't know. There's probably a better word for that feeling. Potential is the possibility of something amazing out of nowhere. That gets me excited.
Yeah, me too. There's so much there. So maybe I'll try and kind of like summarize it and wrap it up here for the first half of our conversation. But, creativity is one of the topics I was most excited to talk with you about. And that's been running through all of this. It's just kind of like the creative pursuits that we have. And these questions are fascinating to me that we have about ourselves, the world, life, what it means to be alive. For me, this podcast is really organized around a question of what is it that causes some people to really care enough to take their career seriously, not in the like must maximize ROI or money in bank, but in the must maximize impact, connection, creativity, expression, positive sum influence on the world kind of way? And the answer is there's like infinite reasons. So far, there's some commonalities.
Yeah.
But it's another one of those unanswerable questions. I'll never have the answer to it. I'll have a more informed opinion, I guess. But the last thing I'll say about what you were saying is like, you don't really care about a given sound. It's like you can measure the frequency that comes out of the speaker when a guitar is hooked up to one of these pedals. Sure. There's a fact-based thing there.
I can hear a record and probably get freakishly close. And
you're a very good guitar player too. So it's not like you don't care about the music, right?
Yeah.
But there is something about story that augments it. My mentor Seth Godin, he has a story about wine tasting and how the shape of the glass doesn't change the molecules there. It might change airflow, it might change some other things, but the shape of a glass you pour a bottle of wine into is part of a story that a winemaker tells you about a wine. And the way the winemaker tells you their story about the land the wine came from, the types of grapes that are in it, the inspiration behind the brand, the color of the bottle, the shape of the glass that it's in, what you should be tasting, all changes how you taste it.
Yeah.
Everything you say about a pedal changes the way someone experiences the frequency that comes out of the speaker from that pedal.
Oh, yes. Like my industry is absolutely here. Like guitar pedals, I could do like blind taste testing stuff and just blow your mind with how people perceive. I could take a $30 Amazon pedal that everyone craps on, put it in an enclosure of the $10,000 pedal, and they'll be like, oh, dude, this is it. I've done this stuff. I love it. I love trolling this reality. But it's also evidence of the beauty of story. It is an opinion, but it feels so fact. Like guitar players don't buy pedals based on how they sound. They buy a pedal because it looks cool. It has a story. It's trendy. There's some historical thing. John Mayer uses it or something. Like they're buying it for some other reason. And that's okay. I think there's this reality. And I love the Seth Godin stuff. Like I remember that story. If you enjoy the wine, drink it out of whatever, that's the thing. Yeah. It's like, what is the experience? And as creatives, we're just creating experiences, really. You can hate a Rothko and you can love it. It doesn't make it good or bad. It's like, it never ends. But you get on the forum or whatever, and there's always like, best Rothko go. It's...
Every time it comes back around.
We want the list.
So let's hit pause here for the first half of the conversation. I want to come back and I want to talk about a few things.
Okay.
I want to talk about brands. I want to talk about how YouTube became such a core part of the JHS brand and what you're doing there. The upside and downside of that, like the art of being genuine, but doing it in the face of algorithms and some things like that. We'll see if we get there. I thought we might have more time for this, but you've said several times that the company has nearly died 4 times. I thought we might get into some of that and what we can take from it.
Sure.
And then I want to talk a little bit about some of your kind of like sandbox projects.
Okay.
How you use Instagram, photography, biking, basketball, writing.
Sure.
Obviously we won't cover all of it, but just as examples of where we're going. So that's what people can look forward to. Hey, it's Barrett. You've reached about the midpoint of this conversation. And while we take a little break for station identification, as they say, I want to tell you about 2 things. First of all, I write a newsletter every Saturday for founders and creators who are leading teams and companies to make an impact through your work. It has 3 sections in it. The first one is a mini essay from me based on my executive coaching work with founders and creators about how to lead well. It has 3 long-form essays or links from around the web that will help spark new thoughts to help you lead better. And it has 1 quote from a meaningful book that I often find myself recommending to friends and clients. All the feedback I've gotten so far is that it hits exactly on the kinds of issues that founders, CEOs, and creators are facing every day in their work. So if that sounds appealing to you, make sure to go to my website at barrettbrooks.com and you can subscribe right at the top of the homepage. That's BARRETTBROOKS.com. The second thing I want to tell you about is that my day job, I actually do have a day job, I'm not just a podcaster yet, is as an executive coach, as I just mentioned. I work with founders of Series A startups and later, and with creators who are doing at least $1 million as a solo founder and are now thinking about growing a team. The uniting commonality between the founders and the creators I work with is that you've reached a point in your business where you know you're going to make it. Actually, you're doing quite well, And now the question is, how much do you want to scale? And what are the leadership challenges that you're going to face along the way? This work is based on both my training as a coach and in my work as an operator and growing my old company ConvertKit from $3 to $30 million in annual revenue. If you're a founder or creator who might benefit from coaching, or if you know someone who's looking for a coach, I'd love for you to check out my site and my coaching page at barrettbrooks.com/coaching. You can learn everything about how I work as a coach and also fill out a form to have an exploratory conversation if that sounds interesting to you. All right, that's all I got for you right now. There's no sponsors for the show at the moment, so consider me your sponsor. Let's get back to the conversation for the second half. All right, we're back. I'm going to talk about brand. You have some strong opinions on brand and its role, and I think it's connected to the role of story. The Ross example is a great one for this because you started with re-infusing that brand with a story. Yeah. And you got to kind of like begin again from that place of here's where this is coming from, why you should care. And this isn't explicit and it's never your driver from what I know about you, but it's like, it's also why you should buy these things on some level, right? It's like, if you connect with this, this is a reason to buy this. You said this thing at one point that I heard on an interview. You said something like, I could give you all the schematics of every pedal I've ever made, and you could never make a JHS pedal.
Correct.
And I wonder if you could just elaborate on that, what you mean by that.
I could talk for an hour on this, but I mean, a JHS pedal is a pedal that is made here in this building with these people, with this story, with this customer service, with these ideas, with our community, with our warranty, with our relationship with the world, with our artists. You can't do it. You can make a product. I can go right now and make a computer, but I can't make like the computer that Mac's making or Dell. Like I can't make their computer. I really can't. I'm missing elements of it. Especially today, there's such a race for products a lot of time. It's always been like this. It's not just today, but brand is just so much more important than the product. Products come and go. I have products that are 15 years old and they pay the bills. Don't get me wrong, but they exist in the strength that they exist because they're part of a brand. A lone product, it is what it is. I mean, when I think of Nike, if we said, what's Nike's product? I have a hard time with that. Some people would be like, Air Jordans. I don't know. That's not Nike, though. Can I go make an Air Jordan shoe? I could. I don't know how, but it's not rocket science. It's a shoe, right? You know, we can do this, but it's not a Nike. And I just think there's such an importance for brand that gets overlooked in some of the fast-paced sell a product and launch, like, let's impress everybody with our product. I think the brand element gets undersold in certain circles, but it's so important because what you need as a business is you need a community. You need people that relate. You need people that are you. And this isn't just a feeling. Like, I know that my customers that love JHS, they could be friends with me, or at least they feel like they could. And I would probably return that feeling because it's a community. I think a brand has that aesthetic. There's also a cultural thing. When you get into clothing and stuff like Nike, you have massive cultural community relations and stuff. Right. I really do believe that. If I gave you, I actually have given schematics. I mean, one of my first, I don't do magazine ads anymore. I gave up on it a decade ago, but I actually posted, there was this big trend in my community of secrecy. I shared earlier, all the older crowd was like, super secret, I'm a wizard. You know, it's like, dude, it's electronics. Like, one of my last magazine ads I ever did was I flipped the pedals backwards. People used to goop the pedal. They would cover the circuit board and hide it. I just had a whole ad that was the inside of every pedal I made, a full page. I love it. I think there's just something about, people clone my circuits. They get them right sometimes, but it's just not a JHS pedal.
Did you always believe this, or did it develop as you saw how JHS was becoming more than just the qualities and components of the product?
I have always felt this way, especially with circuitry, because I'm a self-taught engineer, meaning like small signal audio engineer. I'm self-taught. I'm actually teaching a YouTube class right now. I've started a show on YouTube where I'm teaching people how to make circuits, and I'm actually doing it so I'll learn more. But I've even reminded lately of like, this is all just, there's nothing new here. It's the flavor. Like everyone's making a cheeseburger. It's all cheeseburgers. Like we know the basic recipes. Now, can two cheeseburgers be drastically different? Absolutely. Can you love one, hate the other? Absolutely. But let's be honest, it's cheeseburgers. So I'm like living fully in this moment of the JHS cheeseburger it's particular. It can be controversial. It can be whimsical. It's whatever, it's its own flavor for sure. But I'm not going to stand by and say like, we're the only people on earth that make this, that could ever make this. This is the best product. I've never said in my career we make the best product. Actually, if I said that, I think I would dry heave. If you ever hear me say we make the best product, it would just be so cringy to me.
It's funny. It reminds me of one of the videos y'all made was a collab with the harpist. Is that her name?
Emily. Yeah.
Emily the harpist. Yeah. And it was this kind of parody of how to build
ridiculous
pedal brand. And it was like actually how not to build a pedal brand.
Yeah.
But one of the things that y'all did was, you must say in every video that you make, we are the best. And it was just funny. Yeah. It was like, if you want to hear the antithesis of the genuine conversation we're having right now, go watch the parody version of this, which is hilarious. And you'll kind of hear the flip side of it. You kind of mentioned that like the people in the JHS community represent, or that are customers represent a community, and that there's this element of built-in connection, similarity, like friendship almost, or hint at there could be friendship or depth there by nature of everyone being in this community. I wonder if there are other signals that a brand is resonating, that a brand is becoming bigger than the products that it makes.
That's a cool question. What are the signals? I've actually never thought about that in that way. It's a really interesting way to probe at that thought, because I think there have to be. So I exist within the guitar community. That's a vast statement. I mean, guitar community covers so many types of people. I mean, people playing Nashville country to Swedish death metal, and people that dress totally different, and people, yeah, it's just vast. It's people that love guitars, people that don't care about the guitar but love the amp, and it's just never ending. The signals obviously have to start in the community. I don't know. I actually don't know what they would be. I think for me, if I've inherently created signals, I think it's all come from caring more about my community than the certain tropes that a brand should do. Instead of saying, I make the greatest pedals, I took it upon myself to show everybody else's great pedals. That was something that happened to us. That wasn't some formula. I just genuinely love the community. I love creativity. So I started showing my friends stuff. And then you could see a community formed around me showing the community. Does that make sense? There was a community that formed around me showing the community. That sounds weird to say, but it was like...
Well, I mean, you were operating as if you were part of a community.
Yeah, I wasn't doing standing over here like, that. I'm JHS. I'm God's gift to all guitar. Bow down. Like, that never is in my mind. I was enjoying the community, and I think it broke down some walls. And even early in my career, I had two massive collaborations because I just kind of bugged these people. I was huge fans. They were like my heroes. One was Robert Keeley. He's like a boutique era 1990s guy. He's one of the first hand-built pedal things in America. Lives in Oklahoma. We did a collaboration because I think I bugged him enough. I was like, you're my hero. Let's do a collaboration. And then the other one is the largest pedal company in the world is in Hamamatsu, Japan, Boss, which is Roland. Roland is a massive synthesizer sound equipment company. They collaborated with me because I used to go over and find them at all the trade shows and like nerd out and ask genuine questions. And then one day I got a call like, we've never collaborated with anybody, but we just love how interested you are in history and our heritage. Let's collaborate. And I'm just like, what? You know, I think from an early point in my career, I really valued and wanted the community to get along better and respect each other.
Yeah. And, you talk about genuineness and really trying to be yourself in the way that you've built this brand. It resonates with me. I mean, I think it just resonates on a human level. It's like we want to connect authentically. We do a lot of things to protect ourselves from that, to avoid getting let down by other people, to like not reveal our true selves. And, you've kind of figured out that being the leader on that, being the genuine person in the room allows other people the space to do that too and to connect with you or not.
Yeah, some don't.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll get into that too. I think for me, like I tend to be vulnerable with people first as a way to invite that back, as a way to invite depth of relationship, as a way to like connect on something more than just surface level stuff. There's a form of that can be like oversharing or artificial or whatever, but it's, for me, that is genuine. It's a way to say like, look, I get kind of stressed about like what people say behind my back and what they think about me and things. So I'm just going to tell you all the stuff that maybe you might say anyways, and then we're good. Like we've got congruence, it's kind of like the last rap battle in 8 Mile or whatever. Have there been times when it's been hard for you to trust that, when it's been hard for you to trust being yourself, when the signals weren't there, when people weren't receiving it, or maybe they were reacting negatively and it was like, oh, maybe that's not a good plan, or maybe it's not working?
2 brands, 2 pedal brands, 2 people that I admire come to mind. I won't name them. They just reject me full on. I actually think this would be even hard for pedal nerds to dissect who I'm talking about, because a lot of this is like interrelational, the way emails feel. Like they just don't like me, and it kind of drives me nuts because I'm like, I don't get it. I've gone out of my way here. I see you as part of this narrative story in the Ken Burns pedal documentary, in my head. Yeah. But you don't want to be a part of it. And I think that's weird. And then I feel bad for them. There's a thing that happens. It's like an empathy where I just feel kind of bummed that someone doesn't want to join in on the community and the way that it's become such a beautiful thing. But yeah, I instantly think of 2 brands. And it just like, I'm just like, oh, why? Why are you like that? They just don't want to be a part of it.
How do you maintain your conviction and commitment to that like authenticity in the face of that kind of thing?
I think it's just the fact that I know that truly at my core, that's what I'm supposed to do. I just feel that's when I'm happy. That's when things click. That's authentic. That is the thing that, as long as I'm not being fake, I can stick around and exist. I won't get burnt out. And this is part of me not being fake. Real Josh really does love involving everyone around and pulling them into the story and telling them, did you realize your company's this important? Like, some of these people don't know. They don't even know their own narrative, which is unbelievable to me. I can't tell you how many amazing companies I've done bios on and stuff, and I'll have to tell them their history. I do this all the time, and it's like, I love it. I've been able to do that for several major companies, and it's like, I love it. That is a genuine like joy for me, to help someone see themselves in the storyline, in the thread.
Yeah, that resonates for me. I think it's one of the things we have in common. 2 things came to mind. One is I wrote this essay about a company working to combat climate change, and it was their story as I saw it, what I saw that was great about them. And they ended up including it in their onboarding process for new employees. It's like part of what they read to get to know the company. I thought that was pretty awesome. But it's also what I hope to capture in each of these episodes is, it's like, I want this to be an encapsulation of a person's thinking and experience, who they are at a moment in time, that each guest who comes on could proudly point to this and say, that was representative of me at that moment in time, in a way that I couldn't have done on my own, because I can't ask and answer the questions. So it resonates with me to do that for people, to reflect back to them what you see.
I love that. And that is the truest statement. It's hard to see yourself that way. It's really hard. We've said a few times here, I actually have a couple notes in my Evernote that they say something like, remember to write down what you're doing. Like I even have part of the marketing media is one guy's, he's a copywriter and he helps edit. And I'm like, hey, set some time aside and be interviewing employees. What's their story? What do they remember? Like that stuff's so important, because I can already tell I'm forgetting. Like it's so painful.
Oh, you see examples of it in your videos. And so we'll use this as a bridge into YouTube. You'll do like a review of past pedals that y'all have made. And you'll be like, this was from sometime.
But I can tell
Christmas. It says Christmas.
Yeah. And I can tell you who manufactured the screws on the back of a pedal from 66. Like that's the stupid world I'm in. I'm so critically inside that historic thing. But I'm like, did we even make this? Is this like, I don't even know.
So I collected Hot Wheels growing up with my dad, and every Hot Wheel on the bottom says the year it was made on it. And I had that thought as I was watching your videos, reviewing some of your own pedals and like the history of them. I think I was watching the one on the Morning Glory.
Yeah.
Morning Glory?
Yep.
And you were like, I don't even know when we made this version. I'm so sad that I don't. So YouTube came into play about a decade ago. You mentioned that you stopped doing print ads. You also stopped going to trade shows.
Yeah.
And my perception is that you saw something changing in the industry that the industry didn't see yet. It was like, you guys are all operating in this old way of being that is beginning to die. And not just that, but I'm paying $5,000 for an ad. I have no idea whether it's worth it. I don't know what that's doing for me. I don't know if it's worth it. I don't know if people even connect with those things. And so Nick, he and his dad were working for you at the time, and he was like 16 when he started working with you, something like that. He's been there forever. You went and took him off the production line and said, hey, Nick, you're a creative person. I'm going to put you full-time on video. That's the plan. Yeah. Let's do it.
That was the plan. You just stated it in its entirety.
And so he starts trying to, like, you guys start with kind of doing demo type stuff. And he starts trying to come up with creative and like off the wall ways to do demos. And then one day you just make kind of like an off the cuff video that does something like 20,000 views on YouTube. And Nick had just got done working for a week on some demo video that no one watched. And he said, that's interesting. And so there was that experience. I think before that, actually, you had started giving these like in-person talks at record shops, kind of wherever, and giving people the history of pedals and the story behind them and the brands that made them, and then doing, sound demos for them on guitars. And there was something there. And I just wonder, like, how did all that come together in those early days to make you think, oh, we should be doing this for a wider audience than just like the 12 people that show up to a local record shop or whatever?
Oh, there's so much. There's so much to unpack here. This is another hour. Let's try to.
That's great.
This one's really important to me because this was the shift in my whole career. I think Josh excited about potential is the answer, but what does that mean? All right, so this is a Josh excited about potential, and I love the hindsight because I'm still curious about some of my decisions. It's an instinctual. I feel excitement. There's potential. I also think, and I'm okay with this. The older I get, I'm learning this isn't an arrogant thing. I used to see that this as being very arrogant, but I like being different. I think there was something naturally in me. It's not that I like being different. That's not how I feel about it. I know that if I do it different, I won't be like everyone else. And if I'm not like everyone else, that works. Mm-hmm. That's an instinctual thing. There's probably some psychotherapy there, childhood stuff again, third time. I don't know. There's some wheel in me that has understood that well. Yeah. So in hindsight, I have to own that more. I'm trying to own some of that. Like, I do have a good instinct for why is it? I remember going the biggest trade show. I'll try to unpack this concisely. The biggest trade show in the MI industry, musical instrument industry, is NAMM. It's in California usually. It's just this giant cesspool of like everybody in one giant convention center. There's like drums, guitar. It's a headache the moment you walk in. 100,000 people, everybody asking you the same question. It's just like a torture chamber for an introvert. But you got to do it. It's where you get dealers. It's where you meet Japan. It's where you meet South America. I grew my business with it. But then there hits this point where you're like, what are we doing here? I've been talking to the same people for 3 years, 4 years. I'm spending 50 grand here. I shut my company down to come out to do this. Like, we're a small business. I just start feeling uncomfortable. But I notice most of my industry super comfortable with this. In my mind, I'm like, they're all thinking this way, and I feel an itch. I need to run with that. I'm excited for some potential. So that's one of those moments, just like the Ross moment. The questions, the analytical thing in me is like, this is broken. Or like, there's potential. There's a different road here. We quit doing print ads and all that. And we quit the NAMM show right after YouTube started. But I have to back up. So we'll do a pause there. The reason we quit these trade shows is, yes, I started seeing what was happening on YouTube. But I think the YouTube thing goes back to, I've looked at this. There's probably some other brand, but I think I'm the first pedal company on Instagram. On Instagram was people posting food that they had for lunch and some legit photographers, right? I also was the first to do any kind of sales on Twitter. I think in the entire guitar industry. I'm pretty solid and sound on that. I remember being with my wife. It was like Black Friday. We ran over to some store and I just ran a sell on Twitter. and I'm just on my phone. And I remember having this moment, like, there's this part of me, you know, I'm of the era where I didn't have a computer and then I had a computer. You're in that age too.
Yeah,
We've had both worlds. We played with Hot Wheels.
I lived without the internet.
Yeah. So I naturally saw the internet potential. I got excited for potential. I saw all those things, but I also had the past that was like, there's a lot of soft skills that are important. You need to be a good salesman. You need to treat people well. And then you can mix that with the internet. I'm very thankful for where I'm at in the timeline. I feel like I had a lot of good work ethic and things from my childhood and my dad. But I remember the technology meeting that in my mind. I remember early in JHS being like, I can just sell pedals on Twitter. Why is no one doing this? I would always go, this is my constant life lesson, my life statement. Why is no one doing this? I feel like,
is it because I'm smart or I'm not seeing something everyone else is seeing?
And you have to ask that, because it's not always brilliance. It's like almost everything someone could ask me about JHS is somewhat wrapped up in, why is no one else doing this? You know, it's like a Seinfeld bit or something. I felt like that over and over. Then our Instagram thing, you know, we're over 100,000 followers as a guitar pedal company in the early days, one of the first Facebook. So I'm seeing all this potential. We're paying Guitar World I don't remember the magazines anymore, but we're paying like, you know, you pay $5,000 for a magazine page. Who is reading this magazine? Do you have any evidence of them reading the magazine? Where do we put magazines? Well, they come in and they throw them in the bathroom. That's fun. You just start asking yourself, why are we doing magazines? This is what happened to me. Why am I paying $5,000 a month, 5 times 12, 3 magazines times 3? I'm like, okay. So then I go, Nick, this is where that happens. Nick, I'm not doing print ads anymore. I'm going to move you over, give you a little more pay, and you're just going to be a creative dude. And it's going to work. It'll just work.
And there's no Steve at this point, right?
No, there wasn't Steve. He saw it too. That's the thing about Steve. Steve will look me in the eye and be like, for the love of God, that's the worst decision you've ever made. But he has that ability to think out of the box, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So we're doing the classic thing. And here's the classic thing. You do a demo of your product. Here's my product. Look, it's the best. It's that whole thing. You already know me. I hate this because I don't even have a pedal here, but I'm like, look at my shiny thing. Buy it. I like cringe so I hate this. Nick finds some creative ways. He has like a puppet that demos pedals. We find some goofy ways to crap on ourselves, be self-deprecating, add humor. But it's like he's working these insane hours, whatever. I get on Instagram one day. This is the story you're telling. And I just show a pedal and I play a little Pearl Jam riff or something. And it gets like tens of thousands of views. And he walks in, he's like, what the crap? No effort, no proper lighting, nothing. And then he starts churning, okay, let's bring that over to YouTube, try some different demos. Let's do these like commercial things. We try all kinds of stuff. Right after that in the timeline, we're still doing NAMM and I kind of hate it. I decide to do an event called Off the Record. And I go to a local record shop and I take a bunch of the vintage museum pieces and I put them on the stage. They had a little venue in the corner. And I had one of the young guys come and DJ. And I was like, hey, grab Hendrix, Are You Experienced, Led Zeppelin 1, grab like, I don't know, a John Mayer record, grab a Rolling Stones record. And it's like, play this track and this. And I'm going to demonstrate. And a public audience got to see me reverse engineer a song. And it was cool. People love that stuff. And Nick goes, you got to just do this history stuff on YouTube. And I say to him, this is honest to God what I say. This is proof that you need to surround yourself with people. He goes, we got to do a YouTube show. And I said, people watch YouTube? I'm dead serious. Because my relationship with YouTube was, I need to fix some bizarre electronic issue in my car. And there's like some dude with
a squirrel ate through my drip irrigation. What do I do with the hole in it?
Like how to use a tie down strap. You know, I'm like, can never remember how. And he's like, yeah, people like, this is Nick telling me. And, you know, he's 12 years younger than me. So perfect gap. He's like, yeah, like people have shows and they like, it's like it's like TV and people watch it. And I was like, you're lying. You're out of your mind. So I do it and it just like explodes. My deal was, I'll do this, but I'm not going to talk about my pedals for like 2 years. And so I didn't. I just taught history, which started fueling, you know how this is. You start a project like that you started a podcast, so you have to look for more people. I started digging into more history, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm going to need to write books. I'm going to need to fly to Japan. I went all in, I have an archival footage. That's the whole what happened. It started like, why are people doing NAMM? The last NAMM I did, I said to Steve going in, I want us to track who we're talking to, who's new, are we actually selling anything? How long are we talking to these people? And let's put that money that we spent against the idea of me just flying to like 4 major dealers and hanging out with them. And it was like comical. It's like such a waste of time. Like, right. The trade show is a $50,000 party for dudes who don't want to stay at home. And I was like, I can't do this. So it's a constant question of why is everyone doing this? So I feel like the core of JHS brand and marketing is we just need to be ourselves. And so the show came more and more through that. I'm just going to teach history. I'm just going to be a nerd. I'm just going to admit what I suck at. I'm just going to let the people around me help me figure myself out.
So we fast forward and now you got hundreds of thousands of subscribers on there, a great video, do over 500,000 views. Some will do 1 million.
Yeah.
You've got a team surrounding you who helps with all the production. And, we joked at the outset of this, it's like just you in the studio right now, which is weird. How do you keep it interesting? How do you keep it true to you now that you've been at it for a while and it's established and there's kind of expectations from you?
The broken record answer, and I stand by this answer, and then I'll give you some disclaimers around the answer. I have to do what I'm excited about doing. So YouTube it's a place for me to do stuff. I got really frozen in time with the JHS show looks this way. And we did it very well for like 3 to 4 years. And then honestly, what happened is I lost a major team member who moved on to a career he wanted to build. And it was awesome. Happy for the dude. It kind of broke our structure. And we had this which I enjoy. I'm the kid that when I clean my room as a kid or even an adult, I'll pull everything out of the room, empty the room. I'm like, I got to see the space. So I kind of love burning stuff to the ground and then what's it look like? So we did a bit of that, a little bit of misery included because you come off this high. We had this perfect team. We had we're like the 96 Bulls or something. So we're restructuring. In that moment, I decided I'm going to play. I have to use YouTube like a sandbox as well. I can't just do that in every area. So I built a live rig at home and I just started doing I would basically have a recording studio, drum machines, drum tracks, play my own bass, loop it. I was doing my own band, demoing products by myself. So I got into this flow of I'll do live streams by myself and have full band music and everything, which I'd never seen anybody do. It's a huge headache to figure out. And then now I'm teaching circuitry because I was I got to get back into circuitry. I've kind of fallen out of that mindset for a few years. I'm going to get back in and start teaching it so I'll learn more. So I'm doing that right now. I just sandbox. I just do whatever I feel like doing. And we have episodes we film. We have a schedule. Bell has a strategy and a plan, but it's not what it used to be and it doesn't need to be. I think that's the hard thing for this kind of stuff. My audience, you'll still see a couple comments. If you go to the last videos, they're like, I want to see the other style of video. You're going to see it. But at the end of the day, that's okay. I need to do what makes me excited. So I've had to treat it more loosely and allow myself to do something that might not be a home run. And that's okay.
You do enough work online and you get haters, right? You get people who are just going to try and tear you down.
Super.
There's especially in America, something about the West. We love an underdog story and we love it when they get to the top and then they stay there too long and it's oh, now you're too big for your britches. We really got to tear you down. This is not working for me anymore. And you've had some of that. And you get all flavors of it. You get criticism, meanness, jealousy, tear downs, whatever, conspiracy theories.
Yep.
And I just wonder, how has your relationship to that changed over time? How have you grown in the face of that as it's come at you?
That stuff for me early on was so difficult. I would classify myself under this broad stroke personality of I'm a peacemaker. I'm a community builder. I mean, I've talked about this.
Yeah.
It bothers me that these two people don't want to join in and be a part of this beautiful story. You know, I've shared this. It was a real catalyst for me to honestly learn how to navigate some of my inner, I mean, it was just therapy, to be honest. I went through some therapy. I mean, I really had some moments where I learned to navigate, why do I care so much? But not lose it and become like Freddy Krueger or something. Like,
Why did you care so much?
Yeah, I think I genuinely have that desire to help, to build people up, for everyone to see, you know, it's the stuff I've shared. I think there's a part of me that, I don't know, I'm still unpacking it. I'm still fully unpacking it, but I've been able to disconnect. I couldn't do this early on. I had nightmarish months, and depending on the situation, I would take it so hard. You know, people saying this, that, and the other, lies, this, that, and whatever. And I really cared, and I wanted to correct the narrative all the time. But I had to learn that's not why they're doing it. They're just angry, hurt people. They're not wanting to actually have a conversation. And the few people I did have a conversation with, you know, sometimes I could have a conversation, but it's just like one person, and, you know, they never were really that hostile anyway. But the people that truly hate you as a creative or as a person or whatever, there is a bit of unfixable there. That's not why they're doing it. They don't really care. They are joining their own community, and that community is just thriving on this, like, let's rip everybody to shreds because we haven't actually ever done anything. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
And I think that part of me, I'm a deeply empathetic person, a peacemaker. I hurt for those people. I sincerely sit here, like, in the truest state and go, I genuinely feel bad for these people. Like, like, man, I wish they could realize there's more to life than this. The first years of that were horrible for me. One of the hardest points I had, I'm talking to my wife. I'm having like a meltdown. You know, I'm not a crier, but I was in one of these points of like, like just really broken. And my wife, she's so funny. We're so opposite. She goes, I would give anything for someone to hate me. It would mean I'm doing something. And I just wanted to be like, what planet are you from? But it started to help me. Yeah, I started to see, this was 10 years ago. That did a lot for me. In the moment, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. You're psycho. But she's right. Like, she had a point. It was funny because it helped me not look so deeply into myself. And then I started to be like, why do I care so much? And why am I trying to fix all these people that don't agree or don't like me?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds to me like there's another version of it that you can imagine where everyone gets to be part of the ride, part of the story, part of something. And they're missing out on that on some level by taking the stance that they are. And they might also be causing others to miss out on that by perpetuating, you know, something that's not true, or a version of the story that if corrected, people might not attach to or whatever. And what's interesting to me is even when you have a conversation with someone that's doing that, the best outcome is they be quiet. They never go back and correct the record loudly. They're not going to go like shout like, I was totally wrong about that thing, and I got to tell you all the things that I got wrong and how they're great. That's not what happens. They just go quiet.
I'm sure you're aware of the data on this. It's outstanding. But like on YouTube particular, positive comments are never a thing, hardly. We actually get a good bit. We've actually been told by YouTube, they're pretty shocked sometimes because I think it's the community piece. But a general YouTuber, it's like a positive person. They watch a video. Cool, I watched the video. They're happy. They don't say anything. You never see that. And so there's this weird, like, the poles are off, and you just constantly see the person who's angry. And it really can get to you. So I haven't really looked at comments in years. I let it all go.
Yeah, I've heard you say that now a couple times, and I was wondering if that was that the turning point, or was that a reflection of a like more inner turning point that you were able to let it go and you stopped looking at it, or was it that you stopped looking at it and that helped you let it go, or was it both?
I was able to let it go and I quit looking at it. Yeah. And that's an important distinction. I realized this. It's the thread of the whole conversation today. What I'm excited about, what I love, who I am, that's what I got to be. And if people don't align with that, I go to bed, I lay my head on the pillow, I feel good about myself. I know I believe in the work I'm doing. I believe I'm kind. I'm helping people. I care. I know me. I'm the only person that really knows me. I'm okay with that. And so I can't make people like that. I just need to be me and just let it go. And the community is proven that the right people show up. The right people come to the party, so to speak. I'm good with myself, and I'm trying to get more and more good with myself. I hope I do that till the day I die. It's like just better and better, like being more comfortable with myself, being more honest, trying to improve myself. And then if people hate me, well, I'm not going to change who I am for this guy that lives in, Southern Indiana who's just reaming me over the coals about some lie. I can't.
Right.
I'm not going to go there. Yeah, his username's like Joe1834 at Hotmail. Like I can't. It's not human.
Well, you can't even have a relationship with that person. And so there's a brokenness even in that. I've been through versions of this. I have a feeling I'm going to have to go through another version of it that's coming. We'll see. But I think everyone has to go through their version of this to like become themselves, to truly become themselves. You got to go through a version of this. You got to get okay with like, some people aren't going to like it. Yeah. Some people are going to hate it. And that's going to be hard. So we could have gone for 3 more hours, I think, based on all the things I had down here. But we're coming up on time, and I've got a couple of standard questions I end with. Next time you come back, we're going to tell the stories of the times the company almost died and what you learned from it.
Deal. There'll probably be one more by the time.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And then we're going to talk a lot about your philosophy around team building and all of that, because I think that you actually have a lot to say there. And maybe we'll get into some of the like fun side projects that you've taken on, things like the art center that you're building and books and all that fun stuff. For the kinds of people that come on the show, I think everyone's trying to build some version of the future that's different from where we are. You're an interesting case because you are building a future, and it's firmly rooted in history, in the past, and the stories that we've come from. Paint us a picture of that beautiful future you're trying to build through the work that you do.
That's a great question. It has a lot of feeling. I mean, I instantly feel stuff with that. What does the future look like, and how does this relationship to the past connect those dots? A big desire for me, just the instinct, like the guttural thing inside of me, is we should really appreciate right now. The thing about the past is we get to look back, and hindsight's 2020. We get to look back and go, that wasn't smart. For me, one of my super hacks as a pedal designer and pedal company is I own 6,000 vintage pedals. I've interviewed the inventors. I know every bankruptcy story. I know a lot of information. Like there's a weird hack there that I wasn't intending on. I have like a lot of knowledge about every mistake everyone made. So I've avoided a lot of wonderful mistakes, right? I think that's the thing about the future is like what's happening right now that we're just glazing over. And this gets into big stuff. And especially as a creative, you mentioned this art house thing my wife and I are working on in our local town. What are we doing in the right now? You and I had this connect over Wendell Berry, I think. These are like beautiful things, the earth. You're huge, your work in climate change and stuff like that. But even down to the simple, what's our relationship with our kids? What are we doing in our community? How are we treating the other kids on the block? Like, this is all stuff that the downfall of humanity is that we just so easily forget our dumb decisions of the past, and we could just keep building. And so I think it's all about context. I think a beautiful future can happen when society, it really just starts personally, when we each personally have context of the past. Maybe that's what was so intriguing about the Civil War for me as a kid. Obviously you're looking at these crazy photos and dead people. It's like really like, wow, I'm 11 years old. But it was like, do people know this? Let's not do this again. Maybe that was the feeling. I don't remember that thought, but that's the feeling is like, do we care? Does anybody, are we checking this out? You remember this? Let's not do that again. So I think a beautiful future is a context of the past. I think that's a people living to not do that again. And there's so many important things. Obviously, climate change and all this, there's a lot of big topics. I think there's big topics that get ignored. And some of that for me is like how passionate I am about community, local community, and the arts influence on that, and giving people a chance and exposing people to what they can't naturally find in their communities. And yeah, I'm just really passionate about that for the future. We're as good as the community that we're in. And I think there's something to be said about that for the future.
I think that's why we both connect to Wendell Berry's work, is his kind of central thesis that you have to be connected to a place, to a community, to physical ground, property, in order to really appreciate the wider problems of the world. That if you can't even appreciate them in the ground that you're standing on or in the people that you're connected to locally, how can you possibly hope to change it on a wider scale?
Yes.
If you can't take care of the 150 square feet of your small backyard, how can you expect to take care of the earth? Can't take care of your children, how can you expect to take care of a country?
There's a fear that I have, I think, with the history perspective, which is, have we learned, and is there a generation, and am I teaching my kids to worry about these massive problems in the world when they can't even take care of their own footing and what's around them? That's not a good path historically.
Yeah, I think it's some of what leads to some despair, is feeling like you're very aware of all of the problems that are out there and very helpless to solve them on your own.
Yeah.
And kind of learning what's my work to do and what's my piece of this that I'm going to do is a beautiful thing. All right, last question. Who are you becoming as a person as you do this work?
I don't know.
Small one to end on.
I know that's like a nuclear option question for me. I mean, I've hinted at it a few times. I'm having a lot of fun right now. Like right now, this month of this year, I feel a lot of change in myself. So I am becoming. I don't actually know. I think I'm excited about the potential of me. I'm having that moment, which is fun. I'm saying no a lot more. I'm staying at home. I'm not overcommitting myself for the first time in my career. I'm trying to sandbox more. I'm trying to be a more present father. I think with business, by no means have I arrived. JHS is working. We have a great team. It's an organism, right? If I got hit by a bus or something, it's going to move on. I've done a good job with that. I think I'm learning to like chill and go, yeah, it is working. Like stop pressing so hard. Like kind of sit back and let it happen a little bit. Like take some extra days off. Think about this, sandbox this. Like you don't have to strive in this exact moment the way you have for 15 years. So I'm excited about that. That's a tough one because I'm an achiever, but like there's like this beauty in I'm getting more done by actually freeing up myself. It doesn't make mathematical sense, but it's like really wonderful. And I'm learning. I feel like a toddler. I'm like fumbling around the living room, barely walking it. But it's like I felt so much better giving myself space and not pressing so hard.
I love that so much. I'm a gardener. I really love look out on my backyard through the window here, and reminds me a lot of observing the change in the garden over the seasons. And I can't do anything about when a flower blooms. I can't do anything about it. I can just give it the nutrients it needs, wash it, observe it, let it be. It's a really powerful practice for me because, I feel the achievement thing. So that's the metaphor that came to mind.
Yeah,
and I love it.
I've always been able to make things work and make them happen. And I feel this side of me that's like, the flower analogy is beautiful. What naturally could happen, Josh, if you would chill the junk out? That's like exciting. Like that's a new potential.
I love that. Well, Josh, I appreciate you. Love your work. It's inspiring to me. You're a good human being, and I'm grateful to call you a friend.
Same to you. This is awesome. I'm so excited for you, and I love the podcast. It's been amazing.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Good Work. I'm your host, Barrett Brooks, and this podcast is produced by my friends over at Podcast Royale. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to hit subscribe or follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you listen to the show. And if you really want to do me a favor, you could go to Apple Podcasts or Spotify and leave a rating and a review. That helps the algorithms pick up on things and helps people find it. If you watch on YouTube, leave a comment down below so that other people know that this is worth engaging with. And if you really love the show, I'd love it if you grab the link to it, dropped it in a text message and sent it to just one friend who you think would really enjoy this conversation. Maybe they play guitar, maybe they love pedals, or maybe they just love business and want to hear from another creative person building a business out there in the world. Podcasts spread through word of mouth, and one-to-one sharing like that is a great way for the show to reach new people. My guest today was Josh Scott. He's a wonderful human being. He is a creative person, a photographer, a storyteller, a historian. He is one of those people who is building his company in a super meaningful way and trying to give autonomy and meaning to everyone that comes to work for him every day, and to build a community around guitar, pedals, and music. If you want to check out more about his work, of course, you can find all the links, notes, takeaways, and everything else you could want in the show notes at goodworkshow.com. And you can find Josh especially active on YouTube. Just search for the JHS Show, or on Instagram, search for Josh Scott there. He's hilarious. He shares some great stuff there on that platform. And of course, you can find JHS Pedals at jhspedals.info. Consider picking up a pedal today if you're a guitarist and you just want to check out what they make. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'm so thankful to have you here. I really appreciate you spending 2 hours with me every week, and I'll see you next week.